Awesome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, this is going to be a fun event. We're going to talk about event planning a little bit. So how many of you are leaders in your group right now? Like have a leadership title maybe? Yeah, okay. How many of you have planned events, like kind of have some event planning experience? All right, cool. So we're speaking to a decently organized crowd. Super quick, like why are you here? Give me some
I want to, we bring in a decent amount of members, but we can't keep them.
Yes.
So I want to learn how to do that.
That's a really good one. Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, same kind of general issue.
Oh, good.
But
To keep them, right? Oh, this is juicy. Okay,
I'm
yeah.
just getting started, or I feel like I'm just getting started, and my first year trying to organize was not great, and so I want to do it better.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Anyone else? Same?
I'm trying to get the SSA on my campus restarted. It
Yep.
kind of dissolved. And also I'm in another community organizing group that is terrible at event planning.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard. So, I mean, before I get started, like, we talk about political professionals, right? Like a lobbyist or a lawyer as these like professional positions. Come on in, you're never late. Technically are, but I won't say anything. Okay, so like we think of these as like these really important positions, right? And they're oh, we gotta hire the lawyers and we gotta pay them 150 grand to work for some of these organizations that are here. But people forget that community organizers are still doing a skill. We just haven't culturally always thought of it at the same level of expertise, right? Where do you get the PhD in event planning necessarily? But the amount of skill and time it takes to do really good events is a trained profession, just like anything else. Now, am I the expert that I think can tell you everything there is to know? Absolutely not. I learned on the job. I'll show you that in a second. This is me as a Secular Student Alliance leader back in like 2010, I think this photo was taken. And so I was in your seats, and I think I kind of naturally liked a few things about events and started to plan some, but the idea of like what made a good event or a bad event, I figured that all out later, kind of looking back and dissecting all the stuff I've done. So event planning, I just want you to all think about as like a serious task, the way you would trying to understand the law or the way you're trying to understand lobbying, for instance. Before we get started, this is it. You can take a photo of this. This is my whole talk. This is literally like the notes that I'm going to give you at the end and we're going to go over when we do a little workshop session. I'm not even going to describe this right now. I'm going to dive into it in a second. But if you want to take a quick photo, this is it. I could do my dumb thumbs up with it. Yeah, cheesy. But, and another thing I want to do real quick, because conferences are way more important than you think. I met my business partner at a conference that I worked with for 8 years. I mean, we're still working together, but I have the job I have today because of the Secular Student Alliance. So what you need to do is network your ass off at this conference. I want you to get as many phone numbers, as many social media accounts of people in this room, because you don't know if these people are your future employers, or employees in the future. I want you to literally put me in your phone right now. I can be somebody that you can email. I have just given you permission to text or email me in the future and go, hey, I have a thing going on. Do you want to chat? I might go, I'm busy. I need to schedule that for 2 weeks from now, but I am giving you the opportunity. You can find me on social media. Just search for Evan Says Blah. That's my account pretty much everywhere. If you're going to steal all my stuff, that's the account to steal. But yeah, I want you to know me, because me meeting speakers like me 10 years ago is how I got into this, and I'm now a professional atheist, whatever the heck that means. All right, y'all ready? Let's jump into it. So, we all know this concept, right? Come on down. Woo! We had a new person coming. All right, we'll get there in a second. Yeah. So, we all know this concept. We've all heard this before. Who, what, where, when, why. That's it. That's the basics of an event most of the time. These are the things you have to think through when you're planning an event. I think this is the terrible way to do the list, though. This is the better way to think about it. This is hierarchically how you should think about what is most important when planning an event. Start with the why. Start with the why. Now, I'm going to get into this in a second. It's not the most complicated thing, but the why you're doing it, if you can solve that, you will provide a better event for people. You will think more about what makes the event special for them. You will help make memories for people that they wouldn't have had otherwise, because you understand the root of why the event exists. The who and the what can go together. They can be different. We'll get into those in a second. And then at the end, once you've figured out these three, you're going to have your where and when. especially when you're on campus. Like the where might be figured out half the time. The when is based on how all these things come together. But this is the way we're going to hierarchically? Is that right? Does that sound right? Hierarchically. Awesome. Okay. Figured out. Thank you. Have you all heard of CASE? The Secular Student Alliance promotes this. It means community, advocacy, service, and education. So this is one framework to think about, right? You're going to plan an event. Well, let's think about why you would do it. Well, let's pick one of these as one of the core things to focus it on. Is it a community or social event? Is it an advocacy event? Is it a service event? Is it a education event? Go ahead.
What did CASE stand for?
Community, advocacy, service, and education. Different organizations might use slightly different acronyms. They might do these differently. American Atheists, for instance, they call it ACEs. You notice they just kind of like rejig the letters. Some people like me, I don't always like this. They had these dreams of being a national org. They never were. They wound up being a local group in LA, mostly people hanging out. And when I was hired, I was one of the first local atheist organizers hired anywhere in the world, right? There isn't really a position like this. I'm creating it kind of as I go. I like to say I'm building the plane as I'm flying it. So when I was looking for resources for how to do my job, I had nothing to read. There are no books on how to build atheist communities, right? Like I joined the Secular Student Alliance 12, 14 years ago, and the SSA was only 10 years old at the time, right? Like, this is all brand new. You are still on the forefront of secular community building in America. There are 2 organizations out there that are, or 3 now, that are older than 50 years in that entire room out there, and those are the national organizations. And even them, most of them didn't have most of their money until the last 25 years. We are in a totally groundbreaking era of what community building might look like for non-religious people, replacing what were institutions like churches. So when I started looking, I found nothing. So I started looking at church material. I started looking at church planting books, which is really weird to read if you've ever read one of those. Most of them are like, just pray to God and God will fix your church. Those are terrible books. But I found one that had a really good idea. And it challenged the idea that most of our communities exist for belonging, right? If I were to ask you why you started your SSA chapter, I bet most of you would say, well, like, people need a place to gather, right? Like, we have a world that is aggressive to our identity. We need a safe place sometimes to talk about our ideas. We want to feel like there's other people like us. This is the inspiration behind like 90% of communities, right? Especially identity-based communities. But the problem is if we build communities only around belonging, people don't stay. Belonging's not enough. Belonging's enough to get you in the door, but does belonging keep you there? Maybe some of you, that you're like, your whole identity becomes it, right? You grow so much just by being a part of that community, but you grew. And so what this pastor in that book that I was reading challenged me to do, challenged us as leaders of communities, he said people think they want belonging, but what they really want is transformation. They want to grow. Think about the best teacher you've ever had. Think about a summer camp you've been to. Think about a family member who changed your life. What was special about those? They transformed you. They helped you grow as a human being. They gave you something that made you better, or they gave you more knowledge, right? They took you somewhere different than where you were. That should be the goal of your community if you want people to stay. Again, we can get people in the door all day long. If I put atheist this poster over here, I can get people to check me out. Atheists United, for instance, we used to just put up stuff online, and we'd get 2 or 3 young people that would check out our events every few weeks. But none of them would stay. And this is a tougher problem when you get off campus and everyone's like, the average age is 50 in your communities. When you're 20-year-olds showing up at a group of 50-year-olds, it can be kind of awkward sitting through lunch with them when all they want to talk about is their retirement funds. Then we are all broke. But But if they offered me ways to work on my, come on in, woo! We got newbies. You're literally sneaking through. Okay, good. Okay, good. But yeah, so if you can find a way to help people grow, if you can offer them something they need, right? So think of how many people are struggling with addiction in our society, right? If you can help them, rather than just give them a space together, if you can actually help them improve their situation, they now care so deeply about you because you're the people who help them grow. You're the people who change their life. Again, a good camp, summer camp does this. A good teacher does this. A good mentor does this. Our good community does that as well. All right, cool. Remember the why? Let's go. Why, who? So let's talk about who for a second. I'm honestly not going to spend that much time on this. These are just some basic, like, if I was a marketer and talking about marketing demographics, we'd go, well, we could talk about where the people are, how old they are, what religious identity they are, what their education is, what their income, right? Like, these are classic marketing demographics. These are the who you need to think about. What's nice about you're on a college campus, you're talking to mostly non-religious students, you know their age, you know roughly their income and education. You've actually solved like 5 of these. So campus is very different, where like some of us that deal with off-campus, sometimes we're targeting like parents who have addiction or something. Like we're going for a very specific group of people, where on campus you honestly have like knocked out a few of these, and you're probably going to do that most of the time. But let's say you decide there's an issue specifically you want to target, right? Like there's some gender-based violence that's happening on campus, and maybe men aren't good in that room. You've decided you're targeting a gender-specific community for that. And so you've got kind of a specific identity now you're targeting. That's the who. We're thinking about who the event's for. People like to say our events are for everybody. We want everyone in the door, but that's a terrible idea. I know none of you want Nazis at your meetings, right? I know you don't want the toxic anti-feminist who wants to shout everyone down at the meeting, right? So really think about who it is. And I'll give you the best tip of your life. They're you. 99% of the time, it's going to be other people like you. So just plan for yourself, and you're going to be making the event great 9 times out of 10. Sometimes you're going to have to do it for people that are very different from you, but most of you are small groups, underfunded, college campuses, and you have little experience. Don't think too hard about it. Plan an event you want to go to, and you'll be knocking this out of the park. Does that make sense? Awesome. All right. This is the fun part. So we did the why, we did the who, now let's talk about the what. So humans have a few traits that I think are inherently kind of part of us when we think about how we want to have experiences in the world. And these are the 4 I want to talk about. We could come up with more, we could define these slightly different. I don't care if you want to mix these up, but these are the 6 I'm going to put on the screen so we can talk through them. We're social. We like to be around other apes that walk, right? We are monkeys in shoes, and we like to be around other monkeys in shoes. We are curious. We like our brains to learn new things. We like to explore. We like to, when we talk about children, like children ask questions all the time. They're inherently curious. We're old. We ask different questions. We sound like we're trying to be smart with them, but it's the same concepts. When I talk to a 10-year-old, it's just unfiltered. We're creative. Right? We have artistic natures. We play music, or we dance, or however it is expressed by you, that is fine, but we are inherently creative. We're emotional. We don't always like to feel all the things we do, but we need to, and we care about those feelings. Again, not everyone has to have everything all the time. We're playful. I'm just adding this one. I think we like to have fun, or whatever else you would define that as. And I think we're existential. And I think our communities have a great opportunity to explore that, right? Religions, people like to argue, focus completely on this. I actually think that's wrong. I think they're mostly covering these. But they do at least have questions that let you explore the existential. They would call it spiritual exploration, grace, right? No, it's just like awe and wonder and what's our place in this wildly huge universe as these little mush bags on a small planet in a small galaxy in a giant universe, right? So these are things we're going to think about. And while you're planning an event and you're thinking about what that event is, you're going to think about choosing 1 or 2 or 3 or all of these that you're going to incorporate into your event. And here's the pro tip. Double up or triple up. The more you can do at once, the more amazing your event will be. So we've all been to a lecture, right? We've all been to a professor gets on stage, they talk for an hour, and we go, cool, like maybe that sparked some of my curiosity, but like it did nothing for me playfully, existentially, creatively, socially. Sometimes we don't even get to talk to other people. We literally sat in a quiet room like you're doing now and not even talking to the people around you. I didn't feel anything. You forget half those lectures, don't you? It's hard to remember those. Now think about people who go to that church experience where they get overwhelmed with love by the people who show up there. They listen to some incredible bands. They're told that they matter in a big universe. They feel something as the music swells and somebody says, I forgive you for your sins. And then they all go hang out and play darts afterwards, right? Like, no wonder that religious experience is so amazing, right? So we need to think about our events similarly. Don't take manipulative stuff that they do, but like these are just core human traits. So I'm going to talk about some of the events I did both in college and beyond and how we incorporated some of those. So I went to a small school in Southern California called California Lutheran University. I went to a religious private school, and one of the things that we ran into when thinking about the who was I have people who exist in a religious society, but like a religious campus. So like the way we talk about religion would have way quicker consequences than maybe at a lot of state schools where you could be anti-religious and like nobody will care. You're just another student on campus. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, let's be real. When I was in college and we started talking about religion, we realized a lot of people's roommates couldn't handle that conversation. Their parents couldn't handle that conversation. Some of these kids were there on church scholarships at our university. So talking about religion, we needed to do it from a curious perspective rather than an aggressive perspective. And so we started doing these things I now call interfaith adventures. We actually went to churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, pagan rituals, and we would anthropologically explore them. We would sit through the whole ritual like we were any other participant, and then we'd come back and talk about them. These I didn't think would be so amazing. I was an atheist in 6th grade and made my parents never send me to church again. I fought and fought and fought, and I was able to get out of it when I was young. And then I go to college, and all I do every other weekend is I go to different religious services. But the impact this had on people, because it tickled the curiosity, it gave them a social element, right? Like, we were able to turn this into retreats. I was able to get funding from the university, and we took a field trip to San Diego and get a house for the weekend, and we visited the Creation Museum, right? That's playful for us in the atheist community. When we go through a Creation Museum, we get to laugh at all their odd signs. So anyways, you can explore these ideas and keep growing with them. One of the ones we did more recently with my community in Los Angeles, we decided coming out of the pandemic, we needed to do something experiential with our community. Our community, 40 years old. We've held lectures every month since 1982. I noticed there were almost no one under 50 going to those lectures. Lectures get boring when you're an adult, and you're forced to wake up on Sunday morning to go to them, right? Atheist communities, not always our favorite thing to do. We needed something experiential, so I had the idea, let's do a camping trip. Death Valley's not far from us in Southern California. Let's do a camping trip. And yeah, people were kind of excited. But remember, if you double up or triple up the ideas, now we said, well, let's take a camping trip, which is a really good social, experiential thing. Now let's go on a moonless night and look at the stars with an astronomer and do a star talk in Death Valley. Once I put those two things together on my marketing, it exploded. People suddenly went from I'm interested to I have FOMO if I don't go, right? Like I have to be there. That's what you're looking for. We were able to get 40 people for this event. We're going to go to Zion this year. We had discussion group meetings, right? I mean, I'm sure you all just like hang out and have some discussion meetings. Mix up your discussion meetings. We were like, how do we make our discussion meetings more memorable? We kept joking about how Christians say we eat babies all the time. Well, let's fucking eat a baby. So we baked a baby cake. This is my last meeting of the year that year. You can be playful, you can be social, you can be emotional, right? These are things that we can and should do with our community. I started a community after college. We lived, thinking about the where, I lived in Southern California. We have some of the best hikes in America there. So we started a monthly hiking group. This became our most popular program, right? It wasn't our hang out at the restaurant or potlucks, it was hiking. Everyone wanted to get out physically. That was just the nature of the group where we were, thinking about the who. Instead of just doing a protest, make it a sign-making party, right? Get some materials together and have some fun. Let people play. We like to do the sign-making party as close to the protest as possible so we can walk there together. So it's a little bit more of an experience. You get time to talk to each other, because once you're in the protest, sometimes that's hard to do, right? Think about the extra experiences that get at the why, right? You're there not just for political reasons, you're also there for social reasons. Okay, that was a lot, right? Let's breathe. Okay, I'm going to quickly give you some tips. This is from a book that recently came out. They're all really good tips. I want you all to have them. It's 5 main concepts from the book. It's called The Art of Gathering, if you want to go look it up. First is exclude people. Now that sounds funny, right? Sam can actually expand upon this for hours if you'd like some stories from Sam. Your group cannot and should not appeal to everyone. Right? For it to be a group, there has to be an out-group and an in-group. And your in-group is what you care most about. Now, you might want to expand that in-group over time, but you need to know what the in-group is. And if you can't define what makes that in-group special, it's not a meaningful group, right? I joked earlier about Nazis. We don't want Nazis in our group. Good, start there. But start working your way down of like, what is the toxic behavior that you don't want in your group? Define it, write it down. And make those rules. So this author describes them as rules. Sometimes we call them code of conducts in our community. There's 2 ways to think about it. One can be like the formal kind of exclusion about who's in and who's not. And literally your marketing should kind of say who it's for. But the second is telling people what they should expect when they get in the room, right? Now you're here, okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk for an hour and a half, and then we're going to open the floor. I actually didn't do that well enough when we started this, so I'm going to talk for another like 10 minutes, and then we're going to workshop a bit. We're going to come up with some events on our own. Second, enforce authenticity. Again, she wrote this book mostly for dinner parties. This is like a 50-year-old woman, but this is actually a really good concept for trying to get people to come out of their shell, right? We've all been to events where we don't feel really comfortable, we don't fully interact, nobody really interacts with us. There was no opening for us to like share anything. Your job as organizers is to fix that. So instead of having a like, hey, welcome everyone, like add a highs and lows, add a tell me the goofiest gift you've ever gotten in your life, right? Like add something where they have to share something slightly personal, and they suddenly participated more authentically. Primed arrival, this is the idea of like making it a kind of special experience or giving them more direction when they arrive. I'd rather you read the book than me get into that one too much. And then a clear ending. We've all been to an event where people just kind of slowly wander off and you're not really sure if it ended or not. And it's kind of awkward. Some people snuck out, right? The sneak out, we've all done it or seen it. Like, it's not actually good. Now, what I recommend is have a time that you go, okay, the official event ended. You get to say that. You give an opportunity for people to leave. When I ran a student group, this gave the kids who really needed to work on their homework, that was their out. They were waiting for that because they really wanted to get back. They were stressing about their homework. But everyone else who wanted to stay, they hung out for another hour or two. You just give that out, and suddenly there's a clean 5 minutes where those 2 groups can separate, and it's not messy. It's not as problematic. Okay, those are good concepts, right? All right, let's finish strong. And then these are just my extra tips that I want to give you for knocking your events out of the park. Please get food or drinks at almost every event you can. Truly, like, this is so simple, but it makes such a difference, right? Especially in college. We all want free food. But I do this with my adult events too. We're doing a beach party soon. We're going to provide drinks for everybody, right? Like, it's going to be a little bit of cost for us, but it makes a huge difference for people's experience. If they are hungry, they are not happy. Photos, please take more photos. Our guy back here is a communication expert, desperate for more photos from your community, and he loves working with me because I'm one of the only organizers in the country that takes lots of photos. And what it does is not just like shows what we're doing, it professionalizes what you're doing, right? It's real suddenly if it is photographed. If you get to put this in, you get to use it for future marketing. Photos also, people want to see themselves. They want to share that they were a part of it. We have a food distribution we started. And the photos, I'm noticing, the volunteers take and they go share with their friends, right? Like when we volunteer, it's kind of for us half the time, right? Like we want to be seen volunteering, and that's okay. We're monkeys in shoes. But yeah, these photos have much more importance than you think, and it allows you to do talks like this 10 years from now. Okay, partners. This is just a super easy tip. You probably run groups that have very little money right now. right? Yeah? You probably only have 5 to 10 people in your group most of the time, especially in the leadership, yeah? Well, then leverage another group. Now you just doubled the amount of resources you have. The second you partner up with another group, they are putting some leadership and time into it. Maybe they're putting some money into it, right? You notice the Secular Student Alliance always partners with a college campus when it does its conferences. Hey, we just got free space for this conference. That's a great partnership right there. Even national organizations are doing that with student groups. Like, you can do that with other student groups. You can do that with professors on campus. Come on down. All right. So partnerships are great. Again, there are millions of people who probably want to work with you. All you have to do is ask and just try to take them out to coffee, see if there's ways to do that. And then the last one is just more of a pro tip on life, patience. You will not plan the perfect event. Sorry. Like, there is no perfect event. And most your attempts will struggle until they don't. But if you keep at it, you have the best shot of having the best events on campus or off campus later in life. I've been doing this job for 4 years, and 3 of those have been in the pandemic. 2.5 of those have been in the pandemic. I literally had a speaker event that 2 people showed up at a 1.5 years ago. It was so embarrassing, the poor speaker who came out for that one. What we did is we regrouped. We said, okay, well, let's just think, let's get back to the why we're doing this, right? We do this because we want people to have a space they can gather. We want people to have an educational experience. What if we go for quality over quantity? So now we host quarterly speaker events. I partnered with some national organizations, and we have over 100 RSVPs for our next speaker event this month. So just like have some patience and you'll get more creative.